A lot of pastel painters are afraid of the dark. And by being afraid of the dark, I mean using the dark pigments to start. So
why is that? Why are they afraid of the dark?
well, often, pastel has evolved so much over the years, and it's such a versatile medium. There's so many applications. You can use so many different media types you can mix with it. And, I think the public thinks of pastel as kind of the light, airy, fairy, soft.
Well, yeah, there's been the media has done a good job of creating this pastel colors, but of course that's not the case at all, is it?
Right. It's the same pigment that's in oil. It's just in a dry stick form. So you can go, you can do nocturnes. You can get really dark with it. So I just want to demo a really dark image, a city image that shows how I use the darks, and I wash them in with denatured alcohol to kind of make them set.
Okay, well, we're going to learn all about the specifics in a minute, but I'm glad to know we're going to focus on getting good darks in your pastel painting. And by the way, if you were watching this and you're not a pastel painter, do not ignore this segment because you're going to want to be. I got to tell you that I have been an oil painter for 20 years, and I kind of resisted pastel, but then I went to Pastel Live last year as the host, and all of a sudden I got addicted. And there's so many things you can do that you can't do with other mediums. So we're going to learn a little bit about that. Let's get the show started.
Okay, so
wow, look at that.
Palette. And these are my 4 signature sets of pastels that Richardson Company had me select. So I have I've merged them all. Blues are all together, greens are all together, yellows and light values, and then the reds and browns and so forth. So that's what I work with and what I demo with. And
outstanding.
My,
all right. And do you carry all that with you when you go outdoors painting?
Oh, no, I reduce it down to a much smaller, like 120 in my plein air setup. So
very nice.
There's my surface. Okay, so I work on sanded UArt paper, or I also make my own panels on Gator board with sanded pumice gesso. But this is the mounted paper, and I use the kind of medium grade 400, and I'm ready to go. So you can see to the side the painting or the photo I'm going to use for reference. I prefer to do plein air, but we're working in the studio today, so we can record this, so that we can, be on camera. So here we go. Okay, so I always start with what I call a tick mark map, and it helps me determine where everything's placed, helps me get the perspective, and perspective is something I really try to help people with, because that's another thing people are a little afraid of. If they don't have a good working knowledge of perspective, it's hard to do convincing structures and cityscapes and so forth. So I always tell people to practice their drawing of perspective. So this is just my little map that is going to help me place things. This is the Chicago River. It's almost a nocturne. The sun's just headed down, and we were on a little electric boat. I've done quite a number of paintings from these boat trips.
So what are you using now? Are you using just
just a little piece of vine charcoal?
Vine charcoal, okay.
Yeah. And this is telling me where I'm going to place the darks. And then I wash them in with denatured alcohol. So you can see it's not a studied, difficult drawing. I'm essentially just tapping the fine charcoal against the sanded paper, and it's picking up the charcoal, giving me the direction and the shapes that I need to go in with the darks. So I use a fairly light hand because they get washed in. You don't want to put too much pressure on these initial darks because then it's harder to paint over them with the mid-tone values. So I'm just kind of skimming the surface, and when I wash it in, it will fill in some of these little.
Now, why do you wash it in?
Well, it kind of fills in the spaces. It sets the dark pastel, so it's easy for me to go over it with the mid-range values. I try to compose pieces that are 3/4 dark and 1/4 light, or 3/4 light and 1/4 dark. It just makes it a little more interesting composition.
Right, so you're picking something that's dominant.
Yeah. If you have an equal measure of values, it's kind of a boring composition.
Well, I have one of those going right now, a boring composition.
Yeah, you get kind of caught in mid-tones and you lose the drama of your composition. Not you personally, but we as artists.
Yeah.
Okay. And I try to stick with, the proper value, but change up the hue a little bit. So when I wash it in, it retains that hue and lets me know, where things are that I've placed and need to go back to. I don't want to go too light yet. I've got to stick with the darks. That's too light.
All right. So you like to build on top of darks?
Yes, just like with oil painting. You try to keep the darks fairly transparent so you can build over them. And I always say the lighter the value, the more pressure you can apply when you apply the pastel.
I have really fallen in love with pastel painting. I didn't really think that I would, but it's so much fun. It's like I call it adult crayons, and except it's professional level, and it's so much fun because you can just pick up and start doing. You don't have to put any paint out. You don't have to do anything.
Right, and you can walk away from it for several days, and you're not wasting paint that dries.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so I have my map in place.
Okay.
And then I use denatured alcohol with a number 6 fan brush. So a fan brush is nice because it's thin and it's spread out, so it gives it kind of a painterly look. And when I'm doing structures, I try to keep these marks vertical. Drips are fine. If you get your darks over where areas are light, that's fine, because I'm still going to be able to tell where those lighter areas are.
Interesting.
And this is where, when I'm painting plein air and do this, people walk away because they think I'm just really messing it up. But there's a reason for this process.
Cool. How did you discover this?
I was just playing around with it. I always have an oil setup in my studio as well as a pastel setup. And sometimes on really large pastel paintings, I will use lots of terp and kind of dried up oil paint, very, very thin, to lay this out. But, I can't do that when I'm plein air painting. So I discovered this method just by experimenting for plein air. So I just take a little bottle of alcohol with me and my fan brush and wash it in. And denatured alcohol dries more quickly than even terps. So, and sometimes terps can be a little oily and there's no oil in the alcohol. So it seems to be the perfect.
So how much drying time do you typically need?
Well, this is all dry. This little guy right here is wet. So I want to try to finish this painting for you while I'm doing the demo. So I just kept.
So the alcohol is dry.
Yeah, it just takes about 5 minutes, and it depends on the climate. Golly, in Texas right now, if it's so hot, it would probably dry on your brush.
Yeah. And did you say denatured alcohol?
Denatured, yeah, it's actually a fuel. It's 99% alcohol. You can use rubbing alcohol, but it just doesn't dry quite as quickly as denatured.
Yeah. What about scotch?
I suppose if you drank scotch, you could use that if you.
It would be a real waste.
It would be better for your painting probably than for your belly.
Those are really, really dark darks.
They are. So
those are part of your set that you have with Jack Richardson and Company.
Yeah. Yeah. So in my studio, I have the 4 sets of 80. So I have 320. I hope I'm doing the math right. And when I go out to plein air paint, my setup holds about 120. So, I have to sacrifice a few. But I just keep my pastel box for plein air ready to go in the garage and pop it in the car. We just hosted 12 artists here over the weekend to paint. The Chicago plein air painters came out and joined up with the plein air painters of Rockford, and we painted in our yard and downtown and at the gardens nearby. So it was really great.
So you're going over your darks and restating them.
I am, yeah, just kind of reinforcing them because they did get, washed in and diminished.
So what is the advantage to putting the alcohol down versus just leaving the darks that you had laid in before?
Well, it kind of makes a more cohesive surface. When I just put them in initially, there were some spots due to the sanded paper, but you need to use sanded paper just to grab the pastels. Otherwise they could kind of over time fall away, and you could lose some of that pigment, and it would get, you have to put glass over a pastel, and it would get behind the glass between, your image and your frame around the glass. So I don't use a fixative, but I do kind of set the pastel with the alcohol initially.
And looks like you're mostly using the side.
I do. I use the sticks like a brush. I take the papers off always, and whoops, knocking this around and things are coming apart.
I wish the manufacturers would just make them without the papers on them.
Yeah. But some people are so organized, they want to know color, number, name. They make like little catalogs and keep track. And that's not me. I don't do that.
Me neither.
So I tried to, use some cooler tones on these bridges that are a little bit more in the distance, just, for atmospheric perspective.
Would you explain that term to the people who might not know what that is?
Sure. There's, atmosphere or air between you and what is in the distance. So your values and hues become more subtle, a little more subdued. So, and there's more light between you and what's in the distance. So it's just everything is diminished and softer in color and value. If you put a real intense dark in the distance, it's going to pop forward. So you have to be careful about that.
Right. So things go bluer, yellow dissipates as things go further away.
Right. So I'm going to start putting some of the mid-range values in now.
Very noisy medium.
Well, my tape has failed me, so this is bouncing. But yeah, there's a lot of scritching.
Yep.
Because of the
It
sand.
came off again. You need to get the staple gun out.
Oh, well. And, the beauty of pastel is you can layer the color. If you don't quite have the right color, you can layer the pastels to make the color you need.
Nice, yeah.
I was out Saturday with 120 colors and I didn't have some of the colors I needed, so I had to just keep layering.
Well, that's good practice.
Yeah. But because you're not mixing like you do with oil paint, it's just a faster medium. You get, quicker results. Because hopefully.
Yeah, you never really stop and think about how much time you spend mixing.
Yeah. And, I tell students just to hold a pastel stick up to a color they're trying to match. And that's a good way to determine if you've picked up the right color. Because, your pastels can get dirty with use. And sometimes they kind of all look the same until you clean them. And I do use some hards if I need to get into a tight spot. So I just need to get a little line in here. And they almost act like a shovel to get some of the pastel, soft pastel out of the way to put another color on top. Because they're, little hard squares.
You do most of your plein air work with pastel?
I do. I grew up as an oil painter and painted for years with oil, plein air. And I've just found this is so rapid that I'm just using pretty much the pastel now for plein air. And, part of the reason it's so rapid is because I'm not mixing paint. Picking up the color I want and running with it. That's too intense for back there. So I like to think about, the negative spaces when I'm painting too. And I paint a lot of L's, the L tracks in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I think of them as calligraphy in the sky.
Interesting.
Okay, so starting to get into some of the negative shapes, spaces here. Okay, so often the sky in a city is a little more yellow because of all the vehicles polluting the air. So I like to do yellow skies in the city.
Oh, wow. When it gets that dark, it really pops.
Yeah. And there's a wonderful glow under this bridge that's kind of an orange glow. I don't know if you can see it on camera
I
in
see
the
it.
photo, but
Yeah.
clean that up a little. And sometimes that underpainting can become shapes that you want to leave in the distance. Okay, so I need to add a little more orange here.
Well, it really does come together fast.
Okay, then there's some other things that need attention back in the darks. And, I'm just thinking about shape and suggesting structures. I'm not obsessing over how many windows are there,
Right.
the exact shape. I just want to get the feel for the light and a sense of the bridges without being too accurate, especially with a quick demo. Ken Oster always talked about the candy that he would add at the end. And
Yeah.
I think of these little bits of light as the candy. Again, I'm using the side and
Yep.
a sideways stroke instead of, using the tip. So instead of calling this brush strokes as you do in oil painting, you want to vary your mark making. So instead of that term brush stroke, we use the term mark making for pastel. And people seem to develop their own signature marks. So you can look at a pastelist's work and kind of identify who has done the painting just by their mark making, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Okay, where did that one go? I've lost the yellow I was using.
Oh, did it drop it to the floor?
No, it just dropped into my box and I couldn't find it. So I'm going back over the darks a little bit, just adding other hues to make those darks more interesting. Light reflected under the bridge, and I want to be careful not to get it too light in value.
It looked like you added more glow to those distant buildings.
And I did, yeah, I put those buildings in to the right. So again, when doing multi-windowed buildings like you see in cities, I let the underpainting kind of define those windows, and then I just will put a lighter value over the top, and I don't meticulously draw in those windows. There's just no need to do that unless you're doing a commission of someone's office building and they need to know exactly where their office is located on the facade. It's just not important to get all those windows in there. You just want to suggest. So painting the negative space, letting some of the underpainting show through. So there's that blue building behind, so I need to get some blue in here.
Boy, that reads like Chicago to me.
Well, good.
What do you do about dust? Do you just let it fall to the easel? Do you have some collection system?
I've got a little bit of paper, like paper towels under here that are catching a lot of it. Outside it doesn't matter. You never want to blow on your pastels, whether you're in your studio. I mean, outside would be okay, but especially if you're in a classroom situation, you certainly don't want to.
Oh, because you don't want to be inhaling that in your lungs.
Right. That should be not blue there. So, painting the negative space gives a sense of space and a sense of those buildings that are back there without being a slave to drawing those buildings in.
A reminder to you guys that if you leave a comment, tell me where you're from. We would love to grab somebody from the comments and give away a copy of my book, Make More Money Selling Your Art. And you can get it by just leaving a comment. And if we pick you, you're the winner.
Yay.
Yay. I love seeing all these international audiences and people all over the United States watching. It's so much fun.
That is so amazing, you know, that we all got connected when we couldn't be physically connected.
Yep. And we're staying connected.
You're right. I'm glad it's still part of our lives. Okay, I want to get some water in there so people know there's a river.
We should do St. Patrick's Day and make it green.
Yeah, right. Changes color as it gets close to the bank. It's in shadow there.
Or I could watch this all day. I guess I'll get a chance at Pastel Live because it's 4 days of watching greats like you do this.
Yeah, looking forward to Pastel Live. It's always fun to do those events.
It's also fun to see how everybody approaches it. Not everybody does it the same way you do. And, you know, some people are doing really loose impressionistic things. Others are doing really tightly rendered portraits. And so there's just so many different approaches.
That's what makes the world go round.
Is that what does it?
Keeps, you know, the art world interesting to just see how differently people work.
Yeah, absolutely. So is your paper, is it on a board?
Yes, I have a frame shop, so I have a dry mount press, so I can mount this paper. And I usually mount to gator board.
Now, when you moved out of Chicago, did you move your frame shop?
I did.
Wow. 30 years of accumulated stuff to move. That probably was fun.
Yeah, right. I think we used 10 U-Hauls.
Oh my.
To get here. But it's worth it. We love it, love it, love it.
How long were you in Chicago?
34.
Wow.
And had the shop in Lincoln Park for 19 years.
Yeah, well, all those people are going to have to come to Rockford now.
Yeah, they have been coming.
That's good.
Painters and collectors, it's been so wonderful. And I'm so happy there's a plein air group here that has formed in Rockford. So.
We need them everywhere.
Yeah. So I don't even know I'm doing it, but I put a stroke down and then I tend to soften the edge with my finger.
I noticed that. It's amazing you have any fingerprints left.
I know. My side job could be bank robber, I think, because of my fingerprints are gone.
I don't think I'd like that very much.
I don't think I would either.
Too much pressure, too much tension.
Take too much time away from painting.
That's right.
So I'm at the point where I just need to clean things up, because I've just established where everything goes and gotten the shapes in. Certainly have the darks in. And I just need to tweak it a little bit.
Okay.
Overall.
All right. Well, I'll be curious what you do to tweak.
Yeah. Just clean up some of these lines. So I'm so glad to hear you're painting in pastel occasionally.
You know what surprised me? I had tried it once before Pastel Live, and it was really awful. If you remember, you gave me a set of your pastels.
I did.
And some paper, and so I tried it right after that, and I just had a miserable failure. But after watching Pastel Live last summer, and when I picked them up, the first one I did was kind of a dog, but after that, it was kind of like, wow, I'm actually surprised I got this good. And I think a lot of the stuff just kind of comes through osmosis when you watch, 40 hours of content.
Right.
It sticks with you. Now, do you ever spray your pastels?
No, I don't. Because I have a frame shop, I have the luxury of putting them right into a frame. So, spray really will dull the pastel, and then you have to kind of repaint. So, yeah, I just don't do that at all.
Well, I think what we're going to do, Nancie, I know you're going to do some fine tuning, but we're going to wrap it up here.
Okay.
Why don't you come back on camera so everybody can meet you?
All right.
In case they tuned in late.
My mouse will never be the same with this dirty hand I have.
Our guest today is Nancie King Mertz, and what a fabulous pastel painter she is. And she's going to be part of the instructors at Pastel Live. What are you thinking about doing at Pastel Live?
I'll be talking about perspective, but that's what I preach all the time.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, both atmospheric and linear perspective.
Okay.
So that's my shtick.
All right. Well, terrific. Nancie, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we will see you at Pastel Live, and hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up there. I know everybody gets a chance to have their questions answered in the chat while your demo is going on, so that's going to be a great opportunity to connect.
Great. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Thank you, Nancie.